What I didn't say was that each time I picked up a German dictionary or a German book, the very sight of those dense, black, barbed wire letters made my mind shut like a clam. I've always thought I'd like to go into publishing. I tried to recover a thread that might lead me back to my old bright salesmanship. I guess what I'll do is apply at some publishing house. You ought to read French and German, Casey said mercilessly, and probably several other languages as well, Spanish and Italian, better still, Russian. Hundreds of girls flood into New York every June thinking they'll be competitors. You need to offer something more than the run-of-the-mill person. You better learn some languages. I hadn't the heart to tell JC there wasn't one scrap of space on my senior year schedule to learn languages in. I was taking one of those honors programs that teach you to think independently, and except for a course in Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and a seminar in advanced poetry composition, I would spend my whole time writing on some obscure theme in the works of James Joyce. I hadn't picked out my theme yet because I hadn't got around to reading Finnegans Wake, but my professor was very excited about my thesis and had promised to give me some leads on images about twins. I'll see what I can do, I told JC. I probably might just fit in one of those double-barreled accelerated courses in elementary German they've rigged up. I had a way of persuading my class dean to let me do irregular things. She regarded me as a sort of interesting experiment. At college, I had to take required course in physics and chemistry. I'd already taken a course in botany and done very well. I never answered one test question wrong the whole year. And for a while, I toyed with the idea of being a botanist and studying the wild grasses in Africa or the South American rainforests, because you can win big grants to study offbeat things like that in queer areas much more easily than winning grants to study art in Italy or English in England. There's not so much competition. Botany was fine because I loved cutting up leaves and putting them under the microscope and drawing diagrams of bread mold and the odd heart-shaped leaf in the sex cycle of the fern. It seemed so real to me. The day I went into physics class, it was death. A short, dark man with a high, lisping voice, named Mr. Manzi, stood in front of the class in a tight blue suit, holding a little wooden ball. He put the ball on a steep grooved slide and let it run down to the bottom. Then he started talking about let A equal acceleration and let T equal time. And suddenly he was scribbling letters and numbers and equal signs all over the blackboard, and my mind went dead. I took the physics book back to my dormitory. It was a huge book on porous mimeographed paper, 400 pages long, with no drawings or photographs, only diagrams and formulas between brick red cardboard covers. This book was written by Mr. Manzi to explain physics to college girls, and if it worked on us, he would try to have it published. Well, I studied those formulas. I went to class and watched balls roll down slides and listened to bells ring, and by the end of the semester, most of the other girls had failed, and I had a straight A. I heard Mr. Manzi saying to a bunch of girls who were complaining that the course was too hard, "No, it can't be too hard, because one girl got a straight A." "Who is it? Tell us," they said, but he shook his head and didn't say anything, and gave me a sweet little conspiring smile. That's what gave me the idea of escaping the next semester of chemistry. I may have made a straight A in physics, but I was panic-struck. Physics made me sick the whole time I learned it. What I couldn't stand was this shrinking everything into letters and numbers. Instead of leaf shapes and enlarged diagrams of the holes of the leaves breathed through and fascinating words like carotene and xanthophyll on the blackboard, there were these hideous, cramped scorpion letter formulas in Mr. Manzi's special rate chalk. I knew chemistry would be worse because I'd seen a big chart of the 90 odd elements hung up in the chemistry lab, and all the perfectly good words like gold and silver and cobalt and aluminium were shortened to ugly abbreviations with different decimal numbers after them. If I had to strain my brain with any more of that stuff, I would go mad. I would fail outright. It was only by a horrible effort of will that I had dragged myself through the first half of the year. So I went to my class dean with a clever plan. My plan was that I needed the time to take a course in Shakespeare, since I was, after all, an English major. She knew and I knew perfectly well I would get a straight A again in the chemistry course. So what was the point of my taking the exams? Why couldn't I just go to the classes and look on and take it all in and forget about marks or credits? It was a case of honor among honorable people, and the content meant more than the form, and marks were really a bit silly anyway, weren't they, when you knew you'd always get an A? My plan was straightened by the fact that the college had just dropped the second year of required science for the classes after me anyway, so my class was the last to suffer under the old ruling. Mr. Manzi was in perfect agreement with my plan. I think it flattered him that I enjoyed his classes so much I would take them for no materialistic reason like credit and an A, but for the sheer beauty of chemistry itself. I thought it was quite ingenious of me to suggest sitting in on the chemistry course even after I'd changed over to Shakespeare. It was quite an unnecessary gesture and made it seem I simply couldn't bear to give chemistry up. Of course, I would never have succeeded with this scheme if I hadn't made that A in the first place, and if my class dean had known how scared and depressed I was and how I seriously contemplated desperate remedies such as getting a doctor's certificate that I was unfit to study chemistry, the formulas made me dizzy and so on, I'm sure she wouldn't have listened to me for a minute, but would have made me take the course regardless. As it happened, the faculty board passed my petition and my class dean told me later that several of the professors were touched by it. They took it as a real step in intellectual maturity. I had to laugh when I thought about the rest of that year. I went to the chemistry class 5 times a week and didn't miss a single one. Mr. Manzi stood at the bottom of the big, rickety old amphitheater, making blue flames and red flares and clouds of yellow stuff by pouring the contents of one test tube into another. And I shut his voice out of my ears, pretending it was only a mosquito in the distance, and sat back enjoying the bright lights and the colored fires, and wrote page after page of villanelles and sonnets. Mr. Manzi would glance at me now and then and see me writing, and send up a sweet little appreciative smile. I guess he thought I was writing down all those formulas not for exam time like the other girls, but because his presentation fascinated me so much I couldn't help it.